Hi students. Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here in Western Canada. I hope all of you had a good week and I hope you're looking forward to an awesome weekend. Welcome Fuong. Hi Anna. Everybody, this is a members chat class. Everybody is welcome to watch. To join the chat, you need to be a member of the channel for this class. We do have a subscribers chat class for IELTS Writing Task 2 after this IELTS Writing Task 1 class. In this class, we are going to be looking at a bar graph for the academic IELTS. And this bar graph will describe some investments made by the government of the town of Springfield. This lesson, as usual, is brought to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS. Visit us there. For the general IELTS, visit us at gieltshelp.com. General IELTS Task 1 writing is different from the academic. It's a narrative piece instead of an expository piece. And if those words are new for you, no problem. I will describe it a little bit more in detail. These websites, everybody, power these live classes. If you're enjoying these live classes and you want to get all of our materials, make sure to join us. Again, aehelp.com. This is our academic IELTS website here. Click the big red button that's just above my head. It's a one-time payment. You get lifetime access. We're an IDP affiliate. We're a British Council partner. We're an IELTS test registration center. I'm a British Council agent. And we help thousands of students every month to improve their English and pass their IELTS exams. For the general IELTS, it's gieltshelp.com. It's the green background. And if you're looking for videos and materials for Task 1 General IELTS, definitely you want to go here, click the red button, and join our premium IELTS package. We do have a discount code for you. It's PUBLIC9, P-U-L or P-U-B-L-I-C 9 for a 10% discount. The price is different in different countries, so check out your local cost. We try to make it available for as many people as possible based on local currencies. Welcome Carolina, our chat moderator. Lovely to have you here with us. Nice to see Karem joining in on the class as well. That is awesome. Again, use that code PUBLIC9 and you can purchase the premium IELTS packages through YouTube as well by going to shopping and checking out through Shopify. With the websites, you also get some apps, Academic IELTS Help and General IELTS Help. You can download those from your app stores. Now, we've got lots of content on the websites to help you with your writing, including sample essays for bar graphs. You can check out this bar graph essay about literacy in India. Here's the URL for that. So when you have a moment, you can take a look at that as well after this class and learn lots about how to write expository essays for bar graphs. Expository essays are one of the main kinds of essays in English and in writing and literature in general. Expository essays seek to explain and expose in a structured way information. So what is happening or what you are looking at. If you have questions, just send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com or admin@aehelp.com. If you have questions about IELTS, about our courses, about English, or even questions about immigration or applying for university, just let us know. All right, everybody. So right now, again, we're going to get into this bar graph. After this class in about 2 hours, we will do a Task 2 writing essay. Task 2 is a persuasive essay. That will be a subscribers chat class, so you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free. It's a good way to get notifications of live classes. And then tomorrow, we will have speaking part 2 and speaking part 3. So we'll do lots of speaking and we will talk with our viewers tomorrow. We do have a bar graph video for you on YouTube as well. Make sure to check that out when you have a moment. It's one of the bar graphs we covered in one of these live classes, and it will again give you just more and more vocabulary and ideas on how to think about these bar graphs and how to write the essay for these bar graphs to get those high band scores. All right. Yes, welcome Anne Bowie, one of our newest members. And I don't see you chatting yet in the chat, but definitely join in. This is group work, so I'm always looking to see what the viewers are saying or thinking or wondering. So if you have questions, comments, just be sure to write in the chat. Okay, let's get into this. So IELTS writing task 1. Definitely start with task 1 in the writing section. The writing section is the last section of your sitting exam. So you have listening for about an hour, a little bit less. Then you have reading for an hour, and then you have writing for an hour. Now, 20 minutes of your writing is task 1, 40 minutes is task 2. Task 1 is worth about 30-35% of your writing score. Task 2 is worth much more, it's worth double. But task 1 should be the easier task as long as you know what you're doing. So definitely start with that one. Don't rush. If you were rushing at the end of the reading section to finish the questions, finish the reading passages, just remind yourself to slow down when you're looking at the writing questions so that you don't miss important information and you understand the question accurately and correctly. One of the most important steps to getting good scores in the writing section is answering the questions accurately. Okay, they're not just looking at your English, they're also looking at your thinking in the IELTS exam. That's why there's 2 versions. Somebody the other day sent a comment like, is this like an aptitude test? It's not even just an English test. In some ways, yes. IELTS is also an aptitude test. So it is measuring your ability to think quickly, think critically. That's why it's a timed exam. That's why there are 2 versions of the exam. It's kind of strange, I know, because they don't tell you that. They don't say, hey, we're also measuring your kind of thinking or the way of thinking in these exams, but they are. Okay, so, and I think that's intrinsic to the exam. So that's kind of in the exam when you understand that you have an academic version of the exam. Okay. All right, so graphs and charts, tables, they're very common part of the education system. You basically see them in just about any major, whether it's law, biology, chemistry, physics, art. You eventually do come across graphs, charts, tables, so you have to be able to understand them, interpret them, explain them using English for the academic IELTS for high scores. Okay, and so we're going to go through this. Karem is asking, how can I reach today's bar graph? I'm not sure what you mean by reach, Karem. So if you're asking how can I see it, you can see it through this course. It's the first place that it's appearing. So this is a new kind of bar graph. We try not to use all the materials from the website just so you can use those for practice. So this is a new kind of bar graph that you're seeing here for the first time. And then Karem, we post them after in the blogs. Okay, so Karem, to answer your question, where you will be able to see this bar graph is in the blogs under the examples, just like this one about literacy in India. I put that in there just a little bit earlier in the chat, but I'll put it in again. Okay, so that's the blog that you see there. It's just above you there, Karem. So you can check out the blog for more sample task 1s. Okay. All right. So task 1, first step, read the question carefully. You should spend about 20 minutes on the task. Don't spend more than 20 minutes on this task, okay? It's very important that you keep it to 20 minutes. You need to make sure that you're spending 40 minutes on task 2. All right, and they don't tell you. So when you're in the exam, they won't say 20 minutes is up. You have to check the watch, okay? Or the clock on the wall. Okay, and then the following graph shows the following graph shows the amount of US dollars invested into various sectors within the town of Springfield in a specific period. Okay, so again, the following graph shows the amount of US dollars invested into various sectors within the town of Springfield in a specific period. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. You should write at least 150 words. And then you have this graph here. Okay, so a really quick tip that's important, everybody, is follow the standard of information processing, which means left to right, up to down. And it might sound funny that I say this, but I'm kind of surprised sometimes how when students see a graph like this in the IELTS, they kind of jump right away to the bars, or they look at the y-axis, or they start looking at the numbers in the x-axis. They completely jump the years. So they kind of jump around to different parts of the graph. That's not a good idea. Okay, so what you want to do is you always want to start from here, going this way, and then going from top down. Okay, that's how information is presented. So you should always look at the year first, the title of the graph, whatever the title is. In this case, it's the time period. Okay, then you should look here. You can look at the y-axis and the number there, 800,000. That's the maximum amount of money spent in these years. And then you can kind of look down. So you see that it starts at 0 and then moves with intervals of 100,000. And then you go this way and you look at the different industries that this government invested into. So you see it's arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, health, housing, human services, youth development. Okay. Yeah, so Redexar says, sir, I often do it in more than 20 minutes. I think I need to practice. Absolutely. So Redexar, you have to find ways to make sure that you stay within that 20-minute time limit. You do not want to take time from task 2. That is not good. Okay. Hi, Ann. Now I can see you joining in the chat. It's great. Thumbs up for you. Great. Make sure to continue commenting and writing answers. This is group work, everybody, so it's kind of like a workshop. Okay, so I'm lecturing, but I'm definitely looking at what you're writing, and I encourage you to write into the chat. Okay, so again, left to right, top down. Okay, that's how we're looking at the graph always. Okay, all right, the question, how do we start? And well, IELTS Task 1 generally, it has 3 parts for the IELTS. In university, it will be a little bit different, but for the IELTS, there are 3 parts to Task 1. Okay, you have the introduction, you have the overview, and you have the analyses, the body paragraph. Okay. Now, each of these requires kind of a specific information, and this is kind of a recipe, so that's what makes Task 1 of the academic IELTS a little bit easier. By the way, Task 1 in the general IELTS, so writing an email or a letter to a friend, is also the easier task. So in general IELTS, also start with Task 1. Okay. So in the academic, it's basically a recipe. If you know what you're doing, then it's fairly straightforward as long as you have some vocabulary. Now, again, everybody, for those of you that have access to our academic IELTS course, so at some point you click that red button and you joined our premium IELTS package, then you have access to your full My Student account. And in your academic course, in the writing section, okay, you have task 1, task 2 lessons. Make sure to go through those because there is a lot of useful vocabulary and explanation on the different types of graphs that you can see. So one good example here is the application of bar graphs. Okay. Line graphs, pie charts, bar graphs, tables, flow charts, diagrams. Those are kind of the main graphs you will see on IELTS. There are also maps. And of course, each of these has purpose. So they're not the same, right? Some data we present on pie charts. Some data we present on tables. Other data we present on bar graphs. And so it's really important that you learn the reason, the purpose for these, not just for the IELTS, but also for university and college. Okay, you're expected to know this information. So you can see here in the course that it tells you that bar graphs are used to show comparisons and contrasts between nominal data, so name data, on interval scales. So in the example that's here, it's a little bit small, the writing, but don't worry about it. Nominal data is usually name data. So here you have Canada, USA, Finland, Japan, Russia, Spain. Okay. There are 4 types of data: nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Okay. And bar graphs are used to show nominal data or comparisons on interval scales. So here, let me ask you a question. In the bar graph that we're looking at today, what is the nominal data? Here, I'll make it a little bit smaller so you can see it. So what is the nominal data and what is the interval data? Or in this case, it's actually ratio, but I won't get into that too much right now. So what is the nominal data, viewers, in this bar graph? Okay, and you can use these terms. So you can use the term nominal data. It does impress the examiner. So when an examiner sees that somebody has that, they go, oh, this person not only knows English, but they know statistics in English. So obviously they're in the band 8, band 9 category. Hi, Domenico. Domenico is doing his PhD, right, Domenico? And I'm sure you're looking at bar charts and graphs all the time, so you're getting familiar with nominal data, interval data, ratio data, and the like, and I'm sure you're using it, right? Okay, Fuang says the x-axis is the nominal data. So Fuang is basically saying that this here is the nominal data. Art, culture, capacity building, community betterment, health, housing, human services, youth development. And Domenico says, yes, he is. I'm sure you are, especially in marine biology. James says nominal data is in the x-axis, as interval data is the y. Absolutely. So that's your interval data there. That's your nominal data there. Nominal data is basically just names. We give names to certain features, and it's a very kind of weak type of categorization, but it's the way we categorize a lot of information. So we have that nominal data, and this is what bar graphs are used for. Okay. So again, remember the course, everybody. There's a lot of vocabulary on how to compare these. Somebody actually asked me just the other day, like, they said, well, Adrian, you said don't use increasing, decreasing on bar graphs too much. And I said, yes, that's correct, because often you don't have increasing, decreasing on bar graphs, right? With nominal data, you don't. So you use kind of these words here, like taller, shorter, higher, more, less, greater, different, opposite to. Okay. So use those. Yes, and you're right, everybody that said it's the x-axis. Okay, so that's your nominal data. And we have 7 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And then here we have interval data. So before you begin to write task 1, you want to make these observations. So you want to see, okay, this is your interval data from 0 to 800,000 with intervals of 100,000. Okay. And then we have our time period here, which is 2012 to 2020. It's 10 years, or put it another way, it's a decade. All right. Okay, so step 1 is the introduction. So you introduce the content. Okay. Now, the introduction is relatively simple. Okay, as I've said in previous classes, the introduction basically is a paraphrase of the question with detail from the graph. Okay. So you look at the question, and I'm going to make it smaller. I know it's a little off screen now when I enlarge that, so no worries. Okay, so we're going to look at the question. Here is the question again. The following graph shows the amount of US dollars invested into various sectors within the town of Springfield in a specific period. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so for the introduction, we need to be able to state this again using our own words, okay, and using some information from the graph, okay. So the first step is always for the introduction to explain to your reader what kind of graph you're looking at. So this bar graph, okay, or you can even say the bar graph. Okay. Technically, students, especially in university, you never refer to locations of graphs like below or above or even the given graph. It's kind of unnecessary. So it's the bar graph, okay? So the bar graph depicts a lot of ways to say shows, illustrates, presents, represents, okay? So lots of ways to paraphrase shows. The bar graph depicts the number of, we could say American dollars, but I'm going to go with US dollars. It's more common. Dollars. Invested means given. Okay, when you invest, you give. Okay. So given for, and then here where it says various sectors, okay, as soon as you see these kinds of general terms or encompassing terms, you want to give more details, okay? So the bar graph depicts the number of US dollars given for various sectors. Now, if we look at those various sectors, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay? Now, these have fairly long names like arts and culture, capacity building. So I wouldn't probably list these all because it will be a little bit awkward. So what I would do is I would just give the number. So there's 7 of them, and they range from arts and culture to youth development. We will discuss them in more detail in the analysis anyway. So I'm just going to say the bar graph depicts the number of US dollars given for 7 different sectors of public, ranging from arts and culture. And you can, somebody asked me, can I use the ampersand sign in IELTS, like in the computer-based or in the paper-based? Absolutely, yeah. If they're using it in the title here, it's the ampersand symbol. You can use it in your writing. Why not? Just make sure you know how to write it. I write it like this, okay? That's my and%. That's one way to write the and% with hand, okay, or by hand. It's kind of like a plus sign with this part connected, okay? So that's the and%. All right. You can do it like this. So mine's kind of the funky way to do it. You can do it like the way that I can't, because I don't practice it ever, but you can do it like the way the computer does it as well, where it's like this, like that, okay? So just make sure that it's legible. Legible means that the examiner can read it, okay? All right. Let's focus, students. Let's focus. Okay, so again, I didn't list all 7 of those. I think it would be a little bit awkward, so I just kind of wrote ranging from arts and culture to youth development. Okay. Within the town of Springfield, in the town of Springfield, over the course of a decade, between 2012 to 2022. Okay, so here in the question it says in a specific period. So instead of writing in a given time, I actually write the time, right? So we can see the time here, 2012 to 2022. So I give that time, and I realize that that time is 10 years, and 10 years is a decade. Okay, so using some nice vocabulary for that. All right, now while I'm doing this and explaining this, everybody, make sure to write. So Domenico, along with revealing all of the awesome adventures you're having in North America, write for this. Or if you have a question, Domenico, like for instance, I would love to hear what kind of a bar graph you're writing about in your marine biology PhD, or what types of graphs you're looking at, right? Because Domenico, that will help people understand why they're doing these bar graphs on the IELTS exam, right? So you did your IELTS recently, you're doing your graduate school right now, you're looking at bar graphs. Let us know what kind of bar graphs. I'm sure you're looking, well, for some of us at least anyway, I'm sure it will be interesting. I like to hear what types of graphs appear in marine biology PhDs these days. As funny as that might sound to some of you, I actually enjoy seeing that kind of knowledge. Okay. All right. So let's dig deeper. Now that we have the introduction, I'm just going to take the introduction and copy it below. Okay, I'm going to stick it underneath the graph here as we continue into the overview. Okay, so the overview is basically the main features of the graph. Okay, what you can see at first observation. Okay. All right, on. Very nice. I love it when new members contribute. On, it's really good that you did that. So before I continue on with the overview, this is what Un has written for the introduction. Good for you, Un. Okay, so Un writes, the bar graph illustrates the funds for 7 different sectors in Springfield over a period of decades starting from 2012, and I would finish this. So I would say, and ending in 2022. Okay. So I would finish that on like that. Also notice the correction here starting from. Okay. with bar graphs or with graphs, you can use the present tense when you're referring to the graph, because that's what the graph is showing you now. And you're talking about the bar graph illustrates. It's doing that now. So you can use the ing here, okay? Now, another correction here is this word here. Let's change that to a different word form. There's a better word form. Funds is okay, but if you want to get a band 9, you have to use a better word form, and there is a really good word form here which makes this word a synonym for investment. What is the correct word form here? Okay, what do you think, students? While you're thinking about that, I'll grab what Fuang has as well, which is good. Okay. So on your first attempt at the introduction was closer to like a band 7, 7.5. Now we're just making a few improvements to make it a band 9 level writing. No, it's so Fuang, it's the same word, just a different word form. So it's not funds. Okay? When you invest, when you support some part of society with money, then you are doing this, and it's the word, the fund is the root word, but it's a different form of the word. Anybody? So the bar graph illustrates. Yeah, very good, Carolina. Almost perfect. You don't need to count it, is the only trick, Carolina. It's funding. Okay? So here we can write funding. The bar graph illustrates funding for several, okay? Funding is the money that is given to support growth and development. So the bar graph illustrates funding for 7 different sectors in Springfield. Let's not take out information here in the town of Springfield over a period of a decade, starting from 2012 and ending in 2022. And here for band 9, I would probably include some concepts of like ranging from housing to community growth. Okay, so I would add that kind of detailed information for those higher band scores, especially if you get a simpler graph, right? So some of you might be thinking, well, I took the IELTS before, and the graph that I saw was way more complicated, or I had 2 of them, okay? There is no magical answer to that. Sometimes in the IELTS, the graph that you see is quite simple. When I sat the IELTS, it was a fairly simple table that I was looking at. However, I have seen much more complicated graphs, and I have seen when there's 2 graphs together. So they're not going to give you a really tricky graph. Like, they're not going to give you ones that you see later in university. But they can be sometimes simpler and sometimes a little bit more complicated. So it's what you do with the information that's important. Okay, that's a really important tip, and I haven't really mentioned that in the past. Okay, is everybody following me there? I'm going to actually put that up here as kind of a new tip that you have to be that you have to pay attention to. Instead of a tip, I'm going to call it a caution. Okay, so some IELTS exams have graphs that seem simpler, while others have more complicated or even multiple graphs. In either case, in any case, you should write about 200 to 220 words for bands 7 to 9. So those higher band score essays for IELTS Task 1 that get 7, 8, 9, they're not just 150 words. Keep in mind that the instructions say that you have to write at least 150 words. That means it's minimum 150 words. And yes, they count your words. So higher band essays usually give a bit more. They give about 200, maybe even 220 words for task 1. Okay. And keep this in mind. If the graph is simpler, go into more details, comparisons. If the graph or the graphs are more complicated, you need to identify key information and not worry about all the details. Okay? Does that make sense, everybody? So that's kind of that's where we're going with this. That's the magic knowledge that you have to understand. So with this simpler graph, the simpler bar graph, you have to make more comparisons. You have to look at, you know, this compared to this or this, these group of 3 compared to these group of 4. So you have to look at more details. If you have a lot of information, then you have to go, okay, that's not too important. I have to focus on this, that, and that. So you have to be more selective. Okay. All right. Makes sense? Looks like everybody's on the same page. Yes, I see lots of thumbs up. Really good. Okay, so the overview. Okay. So that's why I'm saying, like here, the reason, sorry, I should explain why I just said that. So the reason I said that is because if you write a really short introduction, then you might not really get the level of detail needed for those higher band scores with a simpler graph. Okay, so you have to give a little bit more. Fuang, for the introduction, writes the given bar chart. And again, I don't want to teach you to write in a way that doesn't work for college or university. So I would just do it like this, Fuang. In college, university, professors definitely don't like awkward information or language, so they don't like words like given or below. That's just a weird IELTS thing. Okay, so the bar chart depicts the ratio of investment among America's currencies. That's strange, and so don't write that. Okay, so the bar chart depicts the ratio of investment in US dollars into 7 plethora is strange there, into 7 categories within 1 decade. I would definitely not use the number there. I would use the word within 1 decade from 2012 to 2022 in the town of Springfield. Now you see, Fuang, it's become quite short, so you want to give a little bit more detail into 7 categories from arts to youth development within 1 decade. Okay, so details, all right. And to give more detail here, if I want it to be really clear, I would even say here that because it's a simpler graph, okay, I would say the y-axis shows the amount of money invested from 0 to 800,000 with intervals of $100,000. Okay, and I would just use, of course, the symbol for dollars here. Okay, and now you have a very clear introduction of this simpler graph. Okay, so the bar chart depicts the ratio of investment in US dollars into 7 categories from arts to youth development within 1 decade from 2012 to 22 in the town of Springfield. The y-axis shows the amount of money invested from 0 to 800,000 with intervals of 100,000. Okay. All right, in the meantime, Domenico, just so everybody gets an idea of why you're expected to do such bar charts and graphs in the academic IELTS, Domenico, who just did the IELTS a couple months ago, is already writing information and presenting information about graphs and charts in his major in university, right, Domenico? And Domenico says this, because I asked Domenico just a moment ago, give us an example of how you're using graphs and charts in your school. And Domenico literally just sat the IELTS. He sat the IELTS. He went to start his master's, and there you go. He's already into some graphs and charts. So Domenico says, Adrian, given the nitpicky nature of my supervisor, he expects a detailed interpretation of the 2 bar charts to understand how climate change impacts not only the presence of zooplankton. Zooplankton is a type of microscopic or very small animal, often a eukaryote, right? It's a single-celled organism. But also the migration patterns of marine mammals towards the northern latitudes, okay? So it's like the movement of killer whales from Mexico up to where I am, to Vancouver Island, and then even further north to Alaska, those migratory orca pods, as we call them. Right, Domenico. That's great. So obviously lots and lots of graphs and charts, and you have to use your English. And look at this word here. Nitpicky nature of my supervisor is what Domenico says. We want to make these lessons fun, right, everybody? So while we're doing this simpler bar graph with our members, I like to go into these details. What does the word nitpicky mean? Let's explain that. Okay, it's a good word to know. Nitpicky, and there's a reason. Anahita says it's too strict. Not really, Anahita. Okay, so nitpicky. It's not fussy, Romelia. Nitpicky. Strict is a part of it. Yes, very good, Domenico. Of course, Domenico knows, as he should. Yeah, so Domenico says it's meticulous for details. Exactly, and there's a reason I'm explaining this word for you, right? So I have also done very advanced research for developmental neuropsychology, and we sure do get nitpicky in those master's and PhD level studies and in science. So nitpicky means meticulous for details. So Anahita, you could kind of think about it like strict for details. And remember how I said just a little bit earlier, or I should say strict about details. Because as we say, the devil's in the details. So nitpicky is meticulous for details, like really paying attention for those small details. And remember how I said earlier that when you're writing your introduction, you shouldn't say the graph below, right? Or the given graph. That's kind of what Domenico means by nitpicky, in part. I know, Domenico, that's not just it, but in part, that's what Domenico means. So in Domenico's world, if he writes the graph below, his professor will actually, or his supervisor will actually look at him and say, Domenico, don't write that. We don't indicate the location of graphs to readers. It's strange. It's awkward. Okay? Write good essays. So that's what he's going to do. That's why he's nitpicky. Okay? And they are nitpicky like that. In the IELTS, you can get away with it. You can get a band 9. It's not the end of the world. But when you get to your graduate school or university, professors will not let you get away with it. Okay? They pick at every single word in your essay. So if you think IELTS is challenging, get ready for university. It's another level. A whole nother level, right? As they say. Okay? So IELTS is meant to prepare you for that. Okay? Exactly, Romelia. He's a stickler for details. Okay? So that's why I want to teach you content that works well for the IELTS and also works well for your university. Okay, so here's another example of that with the overview. Okay, so An Phuong, I love how you invested effort into the introduction. That's great. Okay. Now do the same, students, for the overview. So the overview is the main information. And a lot of students will go most and least. So a lot of students will say, okay, the most money was invested into capacity building and the least money was invested into health. Most, least. And Domenico's supervisor might say, well, guys, yeah, we can see that, and that's okay, but is that really what we learn or what we can see at first glance from this graph mostly? Is that the significant information here? Is that the main feature of this graph? I would say not. I would say Domenico's supervisor might say, nah, it's not this. Why? Because this, and this, they're all very similar in range. Okay? So that's a much more important feature. And then this, and this are obviously much less, right? We can see that there's quite a gap between these two sets of data. So very cleverly, Domenico's supervisor would probably say, I would be more interested to identify that information, right? So in Domenico's world, if this, instead of arts, culture, capacity building, if this were zooplankton, phytoplankton, and this set represented the growth of phytoplankton, this group represented the growth of zooplankton in these years, then instead of focusing on one species of zooplankton and phytoplankton, Domenico's professor would be much more curious about the difference, the significant difference between the overall growth of zooplankton and phytoplankton. Right? Phytoplankton are the plant micro creatures. Okay? All right, but we're not writing about zooplankton and phytoplankton. We are writing about this information here. So here, what we want to note firstly as the main feature are these four here. And again, everybody, my goal is to show you a Band 9 level essay. Okay? Now, here's an interesting trick, okay? If you have really good content, but you're making some grammar mistakes, some vocabulary mistakes, you can still get a fairly good score. If you have really simple content, like most, least, and you're using clear English, but it's just fairly simple, generic content, it's still very difficult to get a high score. Content is king. Everybody got that? So good thinking with lower English can get you higher scores than good English with no thinking. Everybody with me, hopefully, right? Okay. All right. Anahita says, what can we say about the first three in a word? Okay. So I would just list them here. Anahita, it's your overview. You can list them. Okay. So I'll write the overview. You write your overview, and then we can kind of compare it. Okay. Everybody with me? Yeah. All right. So let's do the overview, and then we'll compare. Okay. So at first glance, and it is our first glance or initial observation. Okay. At first glance, it is evident that four sectors, arts and culture, okay, I'll go a little bit. So arts and culture, capacity building. Capacity building means like increasing the number of people in the town or that the town is able to host. Capacity building, community betterment, and human services received significantly more funding than health, housing, and youth development in this decade. Okay, so that's my first observation there. All right, so I can clearly see that these four received significantly more. How much more? Well, twice as much as housing and youth development, and almost 4 times as much as health. Okay. Anahita says, it is time-taking to mention all 3 by their name. Yes, but Anahita, in this case, it makes sense because we want to identify what it is, right? So again, keep in mind that this is a simpler graph. You don't have a ton of data here. You don't have multiple graphs. So you should take the time to give the appropriate details for these 7 categories. So you will have to mention them at some point, right? And this is definitely a good point to mention them in. Okay. All right. So that's what we notice at first glance. Okay. So at first glance, it is evident that 4 sectors, arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, and human services, received significantly more funding than health, housing, and youth development in this decade. Now I might mention most and least. So capacity building received the most funding, as where health received the least funding. Okay. If I want to write a little bit more, I might actually, in the computer-based exam, skip this and then only write this if I feel like I still have time and I can put in a few more words. So capacity building received the most funding of all, and health clearly received the least. Okay. Instead of funding, I'm going to use the word investment at this point, just so I'm not being repetitive. Okay. So far, this is my introduction and my overview at a Band 9 level for this bar graph. Okay. The bar graph depicts the number of US dollars given for 7 different sectors of public, ranging from arts and culture to youth development in the town of Springfield over the course of a decade between 2012 to 2022. At first glance, it is evident that 4 sectors, art and culture, capacity building, community betterment, and human services, received significantly more funding than health, housing, and youth development in this decade. Capacity building received the most investment of all, and health clearly received the least. Okay, good. Now make sure when you write than, always use the comparative for this. So THAN, not THEN. Okay, that's a common mistake. All right. James Nguyen, nice to have you come on board here. So James, for this one, says, at first glance, it is obvious that arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, and youth development bars are 2 or 3 times as the other ones. Now, James, I would not write that in the overview. I would be putting that kind of content with the dollar amounts into the analysis. That's too much detail comparing the actual differences, the scale differences of the numbers here, okay? So it's good thinking, James, but I would not do that for the overview. I personally would definitely do that for the analysis. I'm not saying my way is the only way. I'm just telling you what I would do, okay? I think it's too much detail. All right. Okay. All right, so now that we're done with the overview and the introduction, we can go to the body. The body's the big one, okay? Body. Structured analysis or analyses based on the overview. And this is why you need a good overview, is because your overview is basically your thesis. It gives the structure of the comparisons. So here, my overview starts by saying that, hey, these four got the most funding. Okay, so I'm going to talk about those, and then I'm going to compare it to these. So that's going to be my step 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and then my fourth one will likely be maybe this is the most, this is the least. We'll figure that out as we go along, but that could be number 4, number 5. Okay, I'm not going to go first, second, third, fourth, because that's going to be kind of confusing. So I'm going to explain that arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, and human services received over $600,000 USD. Okay, once you have the dollars, then you can say USD in these 10 years. All right. Okay, let's do this. So let's make these comparisons. Follow with me, and members, I encourage you to write your own versions to see whether or not it makes sense and if you have any mistakes that need to be corrected. Okay, so try to compare these four. I'm trying to give you a little bit of a head start here as well. Okay, so with the analysis, there are lots of ways to start. Don't write firstly. This is not a process essay. Firstly is used best when you're writing on a process essay, like first, second, third, fourth, firstly, secondly, thirdly. Okay, so I'm not going to write first. I'm just going to write in more detail, because that's literally what I'm doing. I'm giving more detail about what I just wrote. So in more detail, capacity building, I'm just going to copy this so I don't have to rewrite it all. Okay. And I believe that in the computer-based, Carolina, I think you know this. It's been a while since I did the IELTS exam, but you can copy-paste. I'm pretty sure. So you can do what I'm doing right now in the computer-based. If you have a long list like this, you can actually just go copy and then paste. Just make sure that you're not, yeah, Carolina says yes, you can. So just make sure that you have it written correctly. It's actually a good way to check that you have good spelling and capitalization. You probably saw me correct this S here to a capital S, and now I'm copying it over. Okay. So in more detail, arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, and human services all received at least 600,000 US dollars, okay, for growth. All right. Now, notice how I used USD here as US dollars. So here in the introduction, okay, I'm saying the bar graph depicts the number of US dollars. Here, what I'm going to do is in brackets, I'm going to go USD, okay, like that. In academic writing, that is the rule, okay? If you're going to use an acronym to make your essay more efficient, then you have to show that the first time you indicate the term and that acronym. Now, what that lets me do is I don't have to say US dollars, or I don't have to use the dollar sign. You can do that as well, okay? But now I can use just USD. All right? Yeah, I bet. Domenico says, my supervisor is so punticulous that if you use awkward language, he will immediately crumple up your report and ask you to rewrite it. Yeah, that's exactly what they do. Yeah, they just throw it out. They don't have time, right? They expect that you know what you're doing. They just crumple it up, throw it out, rewrite it. Okay, sometimes they don't even explain. They just say you need to rewrite this. And it's up to you to know what your mistake was. Okay. All right, Domenico, it's really important, and students, it's really important that you share these experiences, because there are a lot of people who take the IELTS and they don't understand why they need to know this kind of English, or what is the purpose of knowing this English. Okay. All right, so the body paragraph. In more detail, arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, and human services all received at least $600,000 for growth, with capacity building receiving just over $700,000 US dollars. I'm just going to use the dollar sign instead this time. Both, I noticed that these are kind of equal here. I'm going to go with human services, actually, because it's the second most. So human services received nearly $700,000, and arts and culture, community betterment received just over $600,000. Okay, that's how I'm going to phrase it. Again, for the IELTS, you don't have to get into too many nitty-gritties. Domenico's supervisor might say, that's not enough detail, I need you to be more specific. Okay, but that's university, all right? So, while human services received closer to 700,000. Both community betterment and arts and culture got just over $600,000. Okay. All right, so that describes my 4 big graphs. Now it's time to contrast, right? So conversely, okay, I'm going to kind of separate that last little one because that one is tiny. Okay. So conversely, housing and youth development got only about half of the previous 4 industries, at just over 300,000 each. Nevertheless, these still received significantly more funding than health, which got the least investment at just under $200,000. Okay, so I'm reporting this last one here, 200,000. Okay, all right. In summary, and you can just add the summary to the end of your analysis. Don't do it as a separate paragraph. Now, again, this is a big difference between university and IELTS. IELTS, they're like, oh, you don't need a summary. Well, no, you don't need a summary, but it's a good idea to have at least a summary at the end of your analysis to give an idea of what we just saw or what did we just learn from this graph. And again, Domenico will probably agree with me here that in university it's different. When you write a report or write an essay, they expect that you have some sort of a summary or conclusion which tells your reader the value of your writing, okay? I'm very surprised that IELTS doesn't emphasize this more, but hey, maybe they have their reasons. Okay, nevertheless, essays that do include some sort of conceptual summary at the end, even for task 1, do tend to score better, right? And again, Domenico in the chat says, yes, I totally agree with you. Domenico, I love having you in these classes now that you're in your graduate school, because I think a lot of the people watching, sometimes they're wondering if what I'm telling them is really that way. And so having you here vindicates my information. It basically says, yeah, no, what the guy says is actually the way it is. Right? So here, we're just going to include a simple summary, nothing major, no assumptions, just what we can see in the data. In summary, it is clear that in this period, certain sectors of Springfield received much more funding or much more money for support and growth than others. And that's all I'm going to say. Okay, so nothing that's too interpretive or assumptive, but we can really just see that in the graph, right? You've got these four, and they clearly have way more investment coming at them or funds coming at them than these four here. And that's my summary. Okay, when you're at home, always review your essay. Okay, try to always make it better and better and better and better and better. You can always make writing better. Okay, that's the magic of writing. All right, so again, let's look at the question, let's look at our answer, and let's make sure it makes sense and there aren't any big mistakes. All right, so task 1 writing, you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. The following graph shows the amount of US dollars invested into various sectors within the town of Springfield in a specific period. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. You should write at least 150 words. Here's our graph. Again, top to bottom, 2012 to 2022, 10 years. We've got 800,000 is the most money received, ranging from no money received intervals of 100,000. The areas of investment that are mentioned are arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, health, housing, human services, and youth development. Okay, Anahita, make sure you put the K at the end of 700,000, not just $700, okay? Or not just $700, all right? Okay, here's the introduction. So the bar graph depicts the number of US dollars, USD, given for 7 different sectors of public, ranging from arts and culture to youth development in the town of Springfield over the course of a decade between 2012 to 2022. At first glance, it is evident that 4 sectors, arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, and human services, received significantly more funding than health, housing, and youth development in this decade. Capacity building received the most investment of all, and health clearly received the least. In more detail, arts and culture, capacity building, community betterment, and human services all received at least 600,000 US dollars for growth, with capacity building receiving just over 700,000. While human services received closer to 700,000, both community betterment and arts and culture got just over 600,000. Conversely, housing and youth development received, I don't like got, so close to each other, so I'm going to write received for better reading. Received only about half of the previous 4 industries, half of the amount invested into, it's a little bit clear language, the previous 4 industries at just over $300,000 each. Nevertheless, these industries received significantly more funding than health, which got the least investment at just under $200,000. In summary, it is clear that in this period, certain sectors for Springfield received much more money for support and growth than others. That's it. Okay, word count, I'll let you know in just a second. Word count here is 196 words. Okay, so 196 words, so 46 words over 150. It's not a lot more, but definitely about the amount that we need for a clear essay. So 196 words and roughly a band 8 to 9 essay. Okay. Yes, absolutely. So Domenico says, Adrian, generally the university professors often request the students to add a short summary of the information that they have reported in their reports before turning it in. Yeah, absolutely. In university essays, especially if it's a longer one, then you have the abstract, right? Which does that, Domenico. It's called, it has a special name and it comes before the essay. It's actually called the abstract. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right. Nice writing, everybody. Nice writing. Students, don't forget that you can practice your task 1 on the websites as well. When you click the green task 1 writing services, you've got some questions there, like the Earth diagram. You have the divorce charts, you have restaurant sales, you have line graphs, and then what you can do is you can write, so these line graphs, and if you want some marking feedback, then you have to pay for it, of course. It's calculated based on your word count. And then you get back a corrected document with all the corrections, comments, and the right way to put together your essay. So you can do that on the website. It's just another feature that you can use. You should definitely use it. Again, lots of content on the website for you to improve. Make sure to click the big red button, reddish orange, to join the premium version. It's a one-time payment. You get all of this information. You get videos. And, of course, we host classes as well. Yes, and you can absolutely use the letter K to express 1,000 in the exam. Just make sure it's a capital K, okay? It's a good question. Just make sure it's a capital K, okay? Not a small k. That won't work. That's wrong. Okay, it has to be a capital K, big K. Okay, good question. And again, members, students, premium course users, if you have questions like right now, can I use K to express 1,000 in the test? Absolutely. Instead of writing 0, 0, 0, 0 all the time, especially when you get into those numbers that we saw today, it's just much more efficient. Okay, everybody, go to ahelp.com, go to gltshelp.com, get that premium course. Doesn't cost you a lot. You get it for lifetime. You can keep learning from it. A lot of students, like you see Domenico as well, even when they're in their school, they keep using our materials because it works, not just for the IELTS, but for university as well. It helps you to understand some of the basics that are required. I'll be back, everybody, in 45 minutes with task 2. We have a pretty cool question for you today to think about. It's about modern education systems. Take a look at the description of that lesson if you want to work ahead. Carolina, thank you so much for being here and moderating. It's always lovely to have a moderator. Domenico, thank you for sharing your experiences in graduate school in your marine biology. That's awesome. And thank you, An, new member, for contributing and participating and asking important questions. That's great. Unbui. I hope that you keep engaging these classes as much as possible. And of course, all the other members, Anahita, James, Elizabeth, Fuang, always a pleasure. I hope to see everybody in the next class. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out from Victoria, Canada for now. Back in 45 minutes. That's a subscribers chat class. So everybody who subscribes to our YouTube channel will join that chat, hopefully. And that will be task 2, essay writing. See you shortly, everyone. I'm Adrian. Back in a bit.